Hello, everyone. Today is June 21st. This is the third Q&A session for the June time crunch. Probably half an hour today, or maybe even less, because we don't have that many questions. If anyone has additional questions, feel free to log on and we'll talk live. Otherwise, I'll record this and I'll put up the link later. I have my analog clock going, so I know to look at the session. I find that a really nice trick to, I think I've shared that with you before. That clock right in front of me is so helpful, much more helpful than a digital clock to keep me on track. Anyway, thank you for the questions for this week. It looks like we had an interesting discussion starting about different exercise types, and please keep that coming because I think we can all learn from it. Nelia had some interesting things to say about Pilates that she does through a sign-up program, and I think there are lots more sign-up programs that we could all benefit from. There's always this idea that we have to run outside and go somewhere for exercise, but when you work from home, that's actually not true, and there's a lot of options for exercising very comfortably at home. So I would really like to continue that discussion in the last week, week 4. What I would like to address this afternoon is the question that several of you have asked. Adele, thank you for bringing up that question. And I think it was Catherine, Alicia, and Kate who also supported that question, that they had trouble with wrapping up the workday, and then the whole question of how to transition meaningfully and without a lot of stress to the family portion of the day, and how to handle that when things get mixed up in between, where there isn't really a very clear boundary between the two. So I'll start with Adele's question about wrapping up her workday. She was sharing with us that she works kind of close up to the time that she knows she has to go pick up her kids from school. So sometimes she gets caught up in her work, and the end of her work time catches her by surprise, and then she feels rushed and has to get the kids, and she feels that even when the kids are home in that first hour, she isn't really focusing because her mind is still on the work. So she was asking what might be some helpful approaches there. So here's my thoughts. So your kids come out of school at 3:15, and you need that time to get ready and walk down to the school, which really means you need a buffer in there. Right now, you're telling yourself that you have until maybe 3 to wrap up your work, but the reality doesn't bear that out. More realistically, you have until 2:30. And so if you give yourself until 2:30 and make sure you deliver and wrap up and pick up your desk a little bit, then you have that half-hour buffer where you can kind of catch your breath and maybe think ahead for the next portion of the day. What do you want to do with the kids? What's going on? Any of that. And then you'll find that because you gave yourself that buffer, you're probably a more relaxed person and you can be a better listener and all of that good stuff. So Helen had suggested setting a timer. That's certainly one thing, but I think it's a matter of when you plan the entire day, that you don't in your mind go, okay, my deadline is at 3 o'clock, when that is obviously not true. So as you begin your work day, and we had talked about that last Monday, that whole visualizing the day complex, when you think in advance, okay, where do things fit here? What work chunks belong where in my day? And all of you know when is the most undisturbed time for you. When is the time when you can really concentrate? And for many of you, that may be just a few hours. So pick those hours carefully. And then when you say yes to work, make sure that yes, you also know where you're going to fit the project you're saying yes to. it may seem really, really intriguing, and maybe it looks like, oh, I can make good money, but does it really fit in the available time without causing you a lot of anxiety and stress? And you want to, especially as a parent with young kids at home, you want to reserve some of your good, healthy energy for that parenting job that you still have to do. So you have to carefully divide your energy for your freelancing and then balance it with the energy you want for family time and for parenting. So Hyacinth shared a good idea. She has a cup of tea with her teenage daughter when her daughter comes home from school. So that's a example of a nice transition time that she created there. So she comes out of her work, she has that conversation and listening and interchange with her daughter. And that, I'm assuming, is kind of a moment that both of them look forward to most days. And then she can decide, okay, what happens with the rest of my day? And her daughter can make that same decision. When your kids are younger and they aren't that ready to sit with you and have a cup of tea and have that adult conversation with you, but things are more upside down and maybe they feel rambunctious because they just came out of school, that's different then. But then you also need to keep in mind that exactly that time you can't be planning any more computer time, because if the kids are running wild and you need to actually supervise their activities or they want your attention, then the computer is just the opposite of what you need. So it occurred to me that there are a few points. Obviously, again, these are kind of generic recommendations I can make, and if that was a real problem in your individual situation, we could work up, step by step, a more detailed plan on how you can do that in your specific situation. But here are some thoughts. Okay, so I talked about the visualization, and I think I shared with you that blog post about if you were to take a car trip, you would make that mental mapping step. Probably you would look at maybe a physical map or a digital map and figure out, okay, which roads do I need? Which exit do I take? How do I do this? And so this daily visualization is something very similar. It's highly effective because you walk yourself mentally through your day, and then you realize right away where are the stumbling blocks. So things where you are double booked, or where you know from past experience that, oh, this is a stressful time of day. So walk yourself through it. And when you do that early in the morning, you also know, okay, is the work you already have going to occupy the available time? That gives you the answer on should you say yes to more? Do you need to postpone stuff? How do you need to respond to inquiries that come in for freelance work? As an aside, you'd be surprised how frequently, if you're a supplier that everybody likes and is used to, how often you can negotiate another day or two when you accept a project. I think as starting freelancers, we sometimes have this idea that we have to accept the terms that are being offered to us. But my experience has been that when I say, yeah, I can do this for you, but can you give me another day? Then the answer in most cases is, yeah, sure, because it's much easier for them to go with somebody they know. They know the level of my work, they know I'm going to deliver on time, and it's much easier for them to give me that extra day rather than turning around and finding another contractor who they may not know. So keep that in mind, to just level everything out for yourself and not be such a victim to those deadlines that are coming at you. You have more control than you realize. So don't overpack the schedule, because that will just create a bunch of stress. And make sure when people get very insistent, when clients get so insistent and they keep ratcheting up the volume that they want to send you, then be sure to speak up too. And not just, again, you have that level of control. You don't have to take everything and always with this fear, oh, I'm going to lose them, I won't be their contractor anymore. Good linguists are not as plentiful as you may think. So when a client is happy with your work, they will be pleased to keep you on, and they will be in reasonable limits, they will be willing to listen to you and go, okay, here is the situation she's facing and this is what she needs at the moment. So say that. Summertime is a good example where kids are home from school. Here in the US, the vacations are just so long, and mothers are struggling with that because the kids are home, they're bored, and the work continues. So I know that a lot of parents are kind of dreading those long summer vacations here in the US or in other countries for that matter. And that's a time where you have to say, I really can't take on the typical volume because this. Then another idea that has come out of some work I've done with private clients is look at the work and see where it fits into those windows where you can really concentrate. What is the quietest time of your day? Mid-morning maybe, or lunchtime, whenever you have the least number of interruptions. That's where your most difficult work belongs, and your paid work, I'm assuming. And sometimes that means that you have to turn kind of the order of your traditional schedule upside down. So to give you an example, if you're used to cleaning up after breakfast, but right after breakfast when everybody is gone is also your quiet time, then maybe just do a real cursory, quick cleanup and let everything sit for later, because you can do some of those chores with everybody around. You can have a conversation while you're doing chores in the house, but you can't have a conversation and watch kids when you have a difficult translation project to do. So kind of, question those traditional things. You've always done it that way, but now you may need to juggle that around some to make sure that the puzzle pieces fit exactly where you have the most available time. So say you have the 2 hours for nursery school or something like that, then just pack the work into those 2 hours and don't do anything else. That can also get done at other times of the day. What else did I write down? I wrote down something about projects that you can see right away when you accept them that they will involve a lot of very finicky detail. I'm thinking difficult formatting or lengthy proofreading and editing jobs with a lot of very fiddly details. In my experience anyway, those are the projects that are most likely to get out of hand, that I translate and I can predict the time it will take me to translate, but then when it comes to finalizing the copy or going over one more time or a second time, then I realize that I did not estimate properly how long this would take. So for example, that old, the example of the PDF, in my case, it's always the medical report that's been signed and then faxed to 3 different hospitals, and it's got those horrible lines, so it won't go properly through the text recognition tool. And then when I take it back out of my CAT tool, I realize, wow, there's text missing or things are out of order. And that takes a lot of time that I didn't anticipate. So make that distinction when you accept something. What kind of project will easily stay within those predictable time frames? And that's the straightforward, the Word documents, the stuff where you, okay, I have a word count. I know all the text will be formatted exactly the same way. This will not give me problems. And then the only kind of area that's not as predictable is the terminology searches. But those projects, I would say, are preferable over, a PDF or something that comes in where it may look easy at first, but then it could have a lot of traps in it, and that's when you find yourself like hunched with your shoulders up to your ears and working night hours because things just completely spilled over. That doesn't really serve anybody, doesn't serve you, doesn't serve your family, and in the end, that money isn't really worth it. When you think about, of course you want to make money and you want to run a business, but how much is enough? When you have that balance to achieve. So I would say steer toward those predictable projects and kind of pick out the raisins. If you are that fortunate and you have multiple offers to choose from, then pick the ones that feel manageable to you. And again, communicate that. If you have an offer coming in, then tell them that it looks to you, and in your experience, it looks like it needs more time. And in a lot of cases, people will grant you that time. What else did I have written down? Buffers, obviously. Planning buffers. A lot of you have posted about setting alarms and timers for buffers. You need that transition time. It's kind of an unrealistic expectation for you to go, okay, I'm going from freelancing to parenting or freelancing to being a partner. You need something in between to just get out of that mindset of thinking about every single word you just typed. And typically a good transition window is anywhere between 10 and 30 minutes, depending on how you work. So when you give yourself that unwind time and that time to go look at the next thing you have to do, you'll be amazed what a difference that makes. And then agreements with partners, with kids as much as possible, with teenagers certainly. So asking for that understanding, communicating what it is you need instead of, again, just like suffering in silence and looking at everyone's demands but not making any of your own in return. You do work at home, you do have a business, there are time needs associated with that, and when a partner is not clear about what those time needs are, that's when those conflicts come about. So obviously you do want to spend quality time with everybody in your household, but it's good to just communicate that. You can say, I need another hour and then I'll be happy to do this with you, or what can we do about this now? So there's a lot of channels that, in my experience, don't always get used because everybody is so stressed. And there's so much happening that those really essential conversations aren't always taking place. All right. That was what I had to say about that whole complex. Then, I wanted to go back to the whole issue of chronic long-term organizational challenges. A lot of you responded to that special session. If you have not yet watched it, I encourage you to do that because quite a number of you had said, you wanted to hear more about that. Some of you have also responded either in the Slack forum or to me privately that you're interested in building more accountability and that we might want to look at forming a group where we hold each other accountable. I think that's really an interesting tool to pursue, and I would love to try that with whoever's interested, because in my experience there is this big difference, and we will talk about that this coming week in the last week of the time crunch. There's this excitement that you have when you encounter a new idea and it works in the short term and you go, wow, I solved that problem, that was really good. But then as time goes on, you find that you gradually are slipping back to old habits that weren't necessarily so great. So how can you maintain those intentions we talked about and those commitments we talked about? And accountability is a huge part of that, because when you have to tell somebody else, then you're going to jump just a little bit higher. You're going to remind yourself, oh, this is what I meant to do. So I would really like to explore that, and I think at the end of next week I will talk about a bit more about how we might structure that so we can continue this conversation past this challenge format that we're doing this month. So it would be a different format, and we'll have to talk what works best for everybody. All right. It doesn't look like anyone called in. That's okay too. It's the weekend and it's the summer solstice. So I wish you a great weekend. And I'll talk to you next week for our last week and for strategies on maintaining a lot of this. Bye now.